The world is waking up, and you finding your way here today is no coincidence. The spirit world always has a way of guiding us where we most need to be at the absolute perfect time. I'm your host, Lindsay Morlock, and you're listening to the Guided Podcast, where we explore how the spirit world works on our behalf to guide us along our paths. This is where you'll learn how to live a life that is both conscious and connected, so you can supercharge your pathway to healing and open to life's magic and miracles. Come along this journey to see how guided you truly are. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Guided Podcast. We are back with Catherine this week, our resident intuitive astrologer, who is going to talk to us about the new moon in Capricorn, which is happening on December 30th. So, Catherine, where are we at this month with this new moon?
So the new moon in Capricorn, we have every year at the end of the year. And Capricorns are known to be the goal-oriented achievers. They're the leaders. They are the ones that get tasks done. They are the sea goat that climbs the mountain. So it is a perfect time every year at the end of the year, the beginning of the new year, that we have this new moon in Capricorn, because it's when we plant our seeds for what we want to achieve in the next year. It's the perfect energy that goes with the New Year's resolution, because it's, okay, I'm evaluating how the past year went in this very kind of like earthy but analytical Capricorn mind. And now what do I want to set out to achieve now? And Capricorns are very determined. They have patience and discipline and persistence, which is why they're born leaders. It's why they get things done. And it's why they achieve no matter what. If somebody has strong Capricorn in their chart, they will be an achiever, oftentimes an overachiever even. So with the new moon in Capricorn, we're planting that seed of what do we really want to accomplish in the year to come. And that's great. I personally changed my New Year's resolutions years ago instead of something I wanted to fix about myself, because I did these New Year's resolutions like something's wrong, I'm going to fix it, right? I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to eat better, that type of stuff. I started doing things like, what do I want to learn in the next year? So I did silly things like back in the day when Pinterest came out, I did a New Year's resolution of, I'm going to learn how to use Pinterest. And that was a really super fun New Year's resolution. But that is the type of thing where I felt confident. I was able to achieve it. I had fun, but I didn't have this like shame or blame attached to some sort of goal that I applied and didn't maintain after March. They always talk about people go to the gym 6 weeks later, mid-February, the gym's empty again because people's New Year's resolutions didn't stay. So with this new moon in Capricorn, we have the ability to plant a seed with patience, with discipline and persistence. But I also want to remind people that just because you can put in the hard work to do something, just because you can be determined to do something, doesn't mean you need to pick something that you're going to beat yourself up about. So that's just my little tidbit about setting new moon intentions at the same time as New Year's resolutions. It's always with this new moon in Capricorn. But really, we're going to think about it of what we do. We are going to be climbing a mountain when we're setting this intention. What height do we want to achieve? And so that's the energy of just straight the new moon in Capricorn. Now, with the full moon in Gemini, we talked about the Jupiter-Saturn square, and that is still in effect during this new moon. It was applying, now it's separating, but basically it became exact just a few days before this new moon. And just as a reminder, that's where we're feeling this tension between the expansion of Jupiter, the constriction of Saturn, optimism of Jupiter versus pessimism of Saturn, expansiveness versus minimalist. This is what we're looking at with this Jupiter-Saturn conversation that started in August. Midpoint in December is going to happen again in June as its final pass. So let's talk about Saturn, because Saturn rules this new moon. Saturn rules Capricorn. So now, instead of thinking about the Jupiter side of things that we looked at more with that new moon in Gemini, let's talk a little bit more about the Saturn real quick. One of the things is Saturn is the willing to do the hard work. But because Saturn's in Pisces, that's a mutable sign. So it's open-minded, flowing, flexible, hard but yet I'll still do the hard work. So that's what's nice about it. It's not rigid, but it is determined. So Saturn can really provide that reality check to help you build a container for all these ideas that were happening with Jupiter and Gemini. And now with this Capricorn new moon, you can pick a seed to plant. Let's filter it all down. What's one thing that you want to put patience, discipline, and persistence towards to bring about at the Capricorn full moon, which will be in the summer in Cancer season? So that is the intersection of this Jupiter-Saturn square and then the Capricorn new moon is all those ideas. Now let's take the one. You've already been working on this for a few weeks, filtering out what really mattered. Take that one seed that you really want to put discipline and persistence towards, plant that seed and know that it's not going to be immediate. That's why it takes patience and discipline. So the other thing that's happening, it's an aspect that came in the days prior and is already starting to separate, but it's a Venus-Uranus square, which just causes some restlessness. It can be disruptive, cravings for freedom, especially when it comes to Venus-like things, relationships, love, romance. So it's one of those signatures where breakups could happen because the grass is greener on the other side, or you're feeling too confined, or you just have a sudden attraction to somebody that, one night stand type of thing. And you realize, oh, whoops, that wasn't actually anything real. So we're coming out of this energy, but it is still lingering a little bit. So I think that's interesting because I feel like that juxtaposes with that Capricorn, solid Saturn feeling. We have also this kind of like restless, impulsive feeling. So those are some things that are going on during the new moon in Capricorn. But there's a bigger configuration going on in the sky that I want to talk about, and a really powerful aspect that in the mundane, in the outer global picture, is no doubt going to be seen. So whether or not you have dramatic examples of this in your personal life, you may or may not, depending on how your chart is. But out in the broader world, we are going to really see some action. And that is because we have Mars opposite Pluto. So Mars is the planet of war, of action, of aggression, of cutting, decisiveness. And Pluto is the underworld. It's death and rebirth, deep transformation. But when I say the underworld, it's like Hades. It's all this the hidden stuff. And when you put them opposite each other, you get aggressiveness. You get like this escalating sense of heaviness. Your shadow, people's psychological shadow can really be coming out. Your shadow can talk for you, which is not always going to be pretty when it's not your balanced side coming out in the conversation, but, your trigger is really talking for you. And then it's this intense death and rebirth struggle. That all of those phrases are characteristics of the Mars opposition to Pluto. So in addition to this Mars opposition to Pluto, we have the South Node and the North Node. They're always in opposition. But the way they're configured in the sky makes them in this perfect X, where we have what's called a mystic rectangle. A mystic rectangle is two oppositions that are making this perfect X. And then the two shorter sides of the rectangle these planets are in sextile, which are opportunities. And then the longer sides of the rectangle, those planets are in trine, which is a harmonious flowing aspect. So this mystic rectangle is actually considered a positive, beneficial aspect that involves tension. So while, yes, we have these two oppositions, it's basically enclosed with trines and sextiles. So that's harmonious. So it's like hard stuff leading to harmony. So when we have a mystic rectangle in our chart, it means something different than what I'm going to talk about now. If you have it in your birth chart, it's a pattern that you could have in your lifetime. The mystic rectangle that's happening right now it's not going to be there forever. It's a transit. It's a specific short period of time. But what the mystic rectangle brings is opportunity for self-actualization. So I was like, what does that exactly mean? I thought, I'm going to look up self-actualization to get a definition of this because I wasn't really sure if I knew exactly what it meant. So the definition of self-actualization is the realization or fulfillment of one's talents and potentialities. So in order to achieve self-actualization, you have to come into self-acceptance. You need non-judgmental self-awareness and a deep understanding of oneself. So if you recall, in the previous full moon in Gemini, we talked a lot about all these retrograde planets. And we have these retrogrades are still happening right now. They're carrying into January and February. And all of that conversation was about going inside, about slowing down, reflecting, refining, revising. So knowing that we have all this retrograde stuff, it is a great time to take that internal look into yourself, looking at your needs, your talents, your flaws, and being honest about who you are without judgment. That's the path to self-actualization. And I feel like we've been leading here for months now. I don't know that I would have known that back in the summertime when we were talking about all this catharsis and change, and you just need to be free to be you and love who you are and express who you are. But that is this path to self-actualization. It's about knowing who you are, accepting who you are, and then like expressing those talents or expressing your potentials. It was really interesting because I was looking up, trying to figure out an example. And so I was looking up more about self-actualization. And I saw an example of someone who's self-actualized, for example, is a painter that paints for the joy of painting. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's their profession, that they're making any money at it, that they're a living, but it brings them fulfillment to express their talents. And that is living self-actualized. So when I come back to this mystic rectangle, one of the oppositions is Mars-Pluto. So to me, that is kind of intense, deep diving into what drives you? Where's your passion? And on the other side, the North Node and South Node makes the other part of the X. And we've been spending since July of 2023 navigating the Libra Aries axis of me versus we, codependence, independence, interdependence. We've been doing this since July of 2023. And it's moving out of these signs in January. So it feels to me like a final exclamation point of this journey. And where Pluto is sitting in this mystic rectangle is a trine to the South Node. And so to me, that feels like Pluto is saying, I'm going to give you one last opportunity for deep release. Because the South Node is released. Remember, the South Node has been in our Libra house, which has been asking us to release those codependent tendencies, to ask us to release all the behaviors that are not harmonious and balanced in relationship. And so Pluto here is saying, I'm giving you one last push to really let go. And with Spirit, the picture they showed me was like wringing out a dish towel and getting that last drop of water out of a dish towel. That's what Pluto trine the South Node is doing in this configuration. And because Pluto's opposing Mars, there might be some heat involved with that. On the other side, we have the North Node trining Mars, and Mars rules the North Node. And I just think this is really interesting because I feel like it's saying, go for it. Did you really acknowledge what your passions are, what your drives are? Like, accept it and live it. And it's that one last push to strive for independence. So I think it's really interesting because the theme that Spirit gave me is breathe the fire and know thyself.
I always equate fire with spirit, right?
Absolutely.
That's the breathing, like we're breathing in that fire, like we're breathing in spirit and know thyself. And as you're saying this, I obviously had no idea that this moon was about self-actualization, but I literally just got a message from spirit that spoke to this about finally living from this place of an open heart and like knowing what I'm actually passionate about finally, and finally living at least a couple of my passions. And they were like, this is true fulfillment. And it looks like nothing I would have ever imagined. But I'm like, wow, that's it. This is the self-actualization.
Yeah. And it's amazing because it feels to me like the fruit of our labors of the last 6 months to a year.
Yeah. I'll
Right?
validate that too, because that's what Spirit said. Like, this is all of your hard work has culminated into this place. And it does feel like that we're beyond October, but it's the harvest.
Yeah. It's interesting because so when I first got the image of Breathe the Fire, I thought of the dragon. Well, the South and the North Node are referred to as the head and the tail of the dragon. So that just seemed like poetic. And it's breathing that fire. It also, when you mentioned spirit, it also made me think of the Kundalini energy. When we bring up that Kundalini energy and bring up our passion and really ignite our spirit through our body, that's sometimes done with fire breathing and Kundalini. So it's like this getting so in touch with yourself that I feel like breathing the fire is a passionate expression of self.
I have to read you a message that I got from Spirit today, because they said the comforts we enjoyed depict the dragon. And it's so true, right? Because it's like the dragon is our ego in that scenario, right? It's so true. Like they're asking us to go for it, go outside your comfort zone, go to the edges and take a leap of faith, live your passions, live a fulfilled life, move away from what feels familiar. Because if we're just staying in there because it's what's comfortable, I love how this dragon energy is coming into this whole thing.
Yeah. And Pluto opposite Mars is not comfortable at all. There's no way to even pretend to make it comfortable. But it's cushioned in the fact that we've been working on this Aries Libra axis for a while. So we're ready for like that final. It's like the final catharsis. And it's cushioned in all these aspects that say, if you do this, if you breathe the fire, if you walk through it to the place of knowing thyself, that's where the opportunity comes. That's where the harmony and balance comes. So what I think is so beautiful about this in relation to the Capricorn new moon is think about the seed you plant from that place versus the seed you plant from fear or judgment or something that's not self-actualized. But the seed you plant from self-actualization is pure and it grows from a place of knowing thyself.
So let me give you an example I think people might be able to relate to. When I was getting ready to think about leaving my corporate job years ago, I remember setting the intention of, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to heal myself so I can get out of this job. That was actually an ego-based desire. What the heart-based desire, I wasn't too far off. There was an edge for sure, but where I needed to move to is I'm willing to heal whatever it is I need to heal within myself so that I can get on board with living my life's purpose. So not I need to do whatever I can do to heal so I can escape some reality that I'm not interested in living, which was my job at the time. And by the way, by the time I left that job, I was at total peace being there, right? That's the evolution of the heart-based desire of no, I just want to be living my purpose. It has nothing to do with this job. It has everything to do with me and this heart-based desire to be living a life that is fully aligned with my sincere beliefs. So is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a beautiful example. And I think that it's interesting where you say that it's such a good example about from the ego, because North Node is the insatiable dragon. There is ego there, right? It's insatiable. It's a drive. I wouldn't say if you're fully going towards that Aries North node that you're in a harmonious space, but it does have drives. And so that's interesting to be like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. That's that drive, right? The Pluto aspect actually was having to go deep and really learn the truth of where you needed to heal, and in order to point you in the direction that was more balanced. This is a perfect way to transition into going through everyone's signs. So what I'm going to be talking about is where Mars is, which is that personal drive for what could potentially be volcanic catharsis because it's fiery, right? So that personal drive is where Mars is. And then this area of deep transformation is where Pluto is. And then the opposite, or the X part, is the nodal axis. We've talked about that part a lot, so I'm just going to do a quick reminder for everybody what houses you're working on. So just for the nodes, if you are an Aries or a Libra, you're working on the 1st and 7th house, the me and the we, myself, my relationships. If you're a Taurus or a Scorpio, you're working in the 6th and the 12th houses. So personal physical well-being and daily routine versus internal psychological retreat and deep healing. Gemini and Sagittarius, you're on the 5th and 11th houses. So pursuit of joy and creativity and children and romance versus friends, networks, community, and benefits. Cancer and Capricorn are on the 4th and 10th house, which is home versus career, foundation versus public reputation. Leo and Aquarius have been working on the 3rd and the 9th house axis, which is the small neighborhood community versus the larger world, detailed learning and communication versus expansion, philosophy, travel. And Virgo and Pisces have been working on the 2nd and 8th house axis, which is resources, personal assets versus resources of others, long-term finances versus like cash flow and value. So that's the one side of this mystic rectangle, is this nodal axis that we've been working on. So the other is this Mars Pluto. So I'm gonna start with Aries, but before I start, there was one more line. And it's funny because as I was putting my notes together, I had it in a different place, and then Spirit really directed me to move it as like the introduction of how we're going to talk about this. And I think it's interesting because the phrase is raging one's way to freedom. Kind of a wow, right? Raging one's way to freedom. Now, that may express itself in many, many ways. I am not going to dictate whether that's internal or external, but Spirit wanted that to be the introduction to this. So it is, I'm just following their guidance. Okay. So we're going to start with Aries and Aries rising, and your personal drive is coming in your 5th house of children, creativity, pleasure, romance, good fortune. So you're driven towards that aspect. And what is on the other side is Pluto in your 11th house, which is initiating deep transformation over the next 20 years. Because remember, Pluto just moved into Aquarius. We're fully done with Pluto and Capricorn for the rest of our lifetime. We're going to spend the next 20 years going through a deep transformation in this house that Pluto is in. So that's true for all the signs that I go through. So for Aries right now, you have this personal drive in your children and creativity that is going to be opposed to this transformation in the area of friends, community, hopes, and wishes. So it'll be interesting to see how that interplays with the other side, which remember would have been your personal self versus relationships. For Taurus, you have that personal drive at home, your family, your roots, even your house, your foundation, versus an initiation into a massive transformation in career, public reputation, legacy. So what you're going to be looking at is how everything you learned with that Aries Libra nodal axis then also speaks to home and career and transformation that's about to be initiated over the next 20 years there. So this is, as I'm going through this, I think of this as We're culminating everything that we have learned over the last 6 months. So much transformation. And this seed that we're planting in the Capricorn new moon isn't just about planting a seed for Capricorn for the next 6 months, because it also happens to coincide with this initiation into this 20-year cycle of Pluto through Aquarius. And so it's that first breath into this Pluto in Aquarius. And now I realize why Spirit said raging was the way to freedom, because Aquarius is about freedom. So Pluto is deep transformation to freedom. And it's getting some fiery opposition from this other part of your life. Okay, so for Gemini, you have this personal drive and this fire that's showing up in your local neighborhood, in communication, writing projects, short trips, siblings, and your school environment. You're learning, training, teaching. And it's opposing this deep transformation that's beginning in travel, in exploration, philosophy, faith, that higher mind of learning. So it's learning on I want to say a more epic level. Okay, so for Cancer, your personal drive is in your area of money, possessions, income, assets, values, your talents. And it's opposing this transformation that's beginning in the area of other people's money, death, debt, taxes, your 401k, your retirement, inheritance versus your own personal income. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, for Cancer, how this interplays with my money, their money, because we've been doing this Libra Aries dance of me versus we. For Cancer, also, that has a lot to do with safety. This is a dance around safety and security. Okay, for Leo, we have this personal drive is showing up in the first house of you because Mars is in Leo. And it's opposing an initiation into transformation into partnerships. So marriage, business partnerships, one-on-one relationships. So that's a big deal. There's this drive, this independence, this I need to be me that's opposing the beginning seeds of how I show up in relationship and this deep transformation and catharsis that is going to happen with Pluto in that house. Okay, so Virgo, this is showing up in the personal drive is in the 12th house of retreat. So this is about feeling really driven to go deep, feeling really driven to understand yourself, to go into your subconscious, to release hidden things. It is also the house of self-undoing. So I almost feel like there's a caution there with it opposed to Pluto, that going deep doesn't need to include risky behavior. Yeah, it feels like it's really funny. I feel like this must be for someone in particular because Spirit's being very specific about it. This is not an excuse to do something subversive in the name of I'm just trying to get into the deep space to release. And it feels to me like they're speaking of a vice, like justifying a vice of an unhealthy habit that you escape in. And because what you're initiating into now, it's like now it's connecting. What it's initiating into is this huge transformation in health and wellness and daily routine. So it's about, you may have this drive to go deep, but maybe not in a healthy way. And you're going to be juxtaposing it with a total transformation of your health and wellness and daily routine for the better. But you're going to go deep with this. It's going to be very transformative. Libra, we're looking at having that drive in your 11th house of community, hopes and wishes, friendships, groups, wanting to be with people, and how that then juxtaposes this transformation that's going to occur in your area of your own joy, your own creative abilities. So yes, it's the creation of children or the creation of romance, but it's creation that comes from you versus the group. And so that's going to be really interesting also as we've been working on the me and we for Libra. And it's about really this deep transformation in Libra's learning to have joy that is uniquely theirs. Scorpio, we have this personal drive for Mars is in our 10th house of career, fame, reputation. And so that is like, I am going to go big. I'm going to push in my workspace. And Pluto on the opposite side is saying, we're actually about to embark on a transformation of home. And so this may mean death and rebirth related to family, changes in family, changes in maybe aging parents and changing in how, how they live or how they're cared for, moving into family homes. All of this is going to be transformational for Scorpios over the next 20 years. So a real kind of like, I want to say catharsis around their foundational space. For Sagittarius, we're looking at that Mars in the 9th house, that personal drive. And this is such a perfect place for Sagittarius because it's that drive for travel, for culture, for learning and exploration that is just Sagittarius loves all of that stuff. And the juxtaposition is actually in the 3rd house of maybe I need to transform what's closer to me. So there's going to be this interesting thing about it almost makes me feel like Sagittarius might feel this call or this passion or this drive to go away, to explore out, to journey or to get big and philosophical. But really their transformation is about learning how to experience things closer to home, shorter distance, their neighborhood, their local community. And also it's going to impact how they communicate and relationships with siblings and cousins and an extended family. For Capricorn, this personal drive is in the 8th house of death, debt, taxes, resources of others, inheritance. And so this is Mars feeling very feisty about those topics. And Pluto on the other side is going to begin this 20-year transformation in your money house. So for Capricorns, we have this ability for profound transformation of our ability to earn money. But in order to do so, we are going to have to recognize our personal talents. And I love this. This is such an easy one to tie back into the self-actualization, right? Because we have to become self-aware and realize what are our talents, what are our potentials, because in doing that and owning that, Pluto is going to help transform this space, the 2nd house space of money and assets and possessions over the next 20 years. Aquarius, this is a personal drive. Mars is in your 7th house. So feistiness in the area of marriage and partnership and one-on-one relationships. Aquarius might be dealing with some heat in this area. It could mean breakups. It could just mean changes in the way you interact with a partner. It could be passion. So it's heat of whichever way it manifests, right? And on the other side, it's this deep transformation of who are you? Because Aquarius is going to have Pluto go through their 1st house for the next 20 years. And it is for all of us Capricorns who just experienced this, you will come out as a different person. There is no if and or but about it. When Pluto goes through your 1st house, you are transformed as just who you are. So this is a really beautiful thing for Aquarius to plant some seeds on who are they? What in their quest for personal freedom, who are they? And then last but not least, Pisces has this personal drive in their 6th house. Mars is in their 6th house of health, wellness, routines. It is also the house of illness. Mars is in inflammation. So having it opposed to Pluto, there is that chance that there might be some heat and inflammation, fever type health and wellness going on while this transit is happening. And it is opposing Pluto in the 12th house of retreat and escape and rest and release. And so for Pisces, it feels like it could really be a situation of needing to acknowledge your health and truly take care of it. And when you think about that in correlation to the nodal axis of the Libra Aries, the me versus we, this is where Pisces is going to have to say, I have to take care of myself and my personal health by resting and retreating, even if others want me to do for them. And that's going to be a 20-year journey in learning how to balance their physical health, mental health, and knowing when they need to retreat as opposed to doing for others. I also think for Pisces, this is a big journey going into psychic development. If that's something that you're really interested in building your intuition, that's another area that you could explore. So we made it through all the signs, but I want to say that this year is wrapping up with a bang.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. We touched on this a little bit, but I feel like it's a well-deserved bang that in a good way. We worked hard for this. If you've been processing and connecting and not hiding your head in the sand with all the chaos, then now we're at this place where we get to go, yes, this is who I am. This is where I want to go. And I'm ready to plant that seed to make it happen. So we're going to breathe the fire and know thyself.
Yeah. What a beautiful way to end the year, honestly. Breathe the fire and know thyself. I feel like in reflecting on so many of the different cosmic connection episodes we've done this year, there's been such a theme about this is the punctuation mark or this is the earthquake. It's just, there's been so much shakeup to really fortify our foundation inside ourselves. And as we've done that work, it feels like we're now entering 2025 with this renewed sense of self, probably a new sense of self, and feeling really fortified in a whole new inner sanctuary, a whole new inner foundation, and allowing that stability to come from within as the chaos will continue around us. There is no doubt. But I think it's a really beautiful image to leave us all with as we move into 2025. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I think that I want to say that, yes, the chaos will continue, but it'll be different because it's going to be new energies, a lot of new energies coming in. We're done with a lot of stuff. We have really dealt with a lot from like 2020 to 2024. And 2025 moves us into, it really feels almost like the reward, right? Like the reward for us going through all of this is getting to now explore who this new us is. And if we've done all of this processing and all of this work, we're going to get to enjoy that.
I love that. What a beautiful way to wrap up 2024. And thank you so much for all of these amazing episodes. And I want to thank you all for continuing to listen. And as always, you can find more information about Catherine Ann and her services in the show notes. But I will look forward to chatting with you all again in 2025. And here is wishing you all a very happy and healthy new year. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Guided Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would share it with a friend or even leave me a review so we can ensure that it makes its way into the ears of listeners who need to hear these messages most. Until next time, may you remember how guided you truly are.